Hello and welcome to another episode of the TK Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alex Best, and today I am joined by my co-host, Anushka Davies. Employee resource groups. What are they? Why are they so important? And how can they have an impact on your business? These are the type of questions that we will be talking about today. Now, on this podcast, I am joined by Faizan Hasan, a senior consultant at Protiviti, and Beverly Tran, a customer success account manager at Microsoft. And we are very lucky to have two individuals who are experienced and knowledgeable on the matter. And I'm really looking forward to sharing their insight. So, wherever you are, grab a pen and a notebook and enjoy the TK Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the TK Podcast. I am your host, Alex, and my co-host today is Nush. So, hi, Nush, how are you? How's everything going?
I'm really well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. And guest that we have on this episode is Faizan and Beverly. So, hi to you both. How are you guys doing? And we'll go with Beverly first to answer that one.
Hey Alex, I'm good, thank you. Just really excited to get recording this.
Nice. And yourself, Faizan?
Yeah, no, feeling good, feeling really excited. Glad, really grateful for you guys to have me on. But yeah, interesting to see how this conversation goes as well, and hopefully impart some sage advice.
I'm sure you've got
you
very very definite amount of knowledge in that brain. I can tell our listeners that in advance.
And may I add, Faizan, that you have the most amazing laugh. I love it.
Thanks. You might want to tell the viewers it's in the volume down if I get going.
I'm super excited about this one. I've heard some really good stuff about Protiviti and Microsoft when it comes to ERG, so I'm dead excited about that.
Yeah, no, definitely going to be a good episode, Nush. So, I mean, I guess that kind of gives a hint to what we're going to be talking about today, which is around ERG. So, specifically, what is an ERG and why it's important to a business and the impact that it can have on the employees as well. I know we sort of just ran through people and we've mentioned just first names. Faizan, do you think you could give our listeners just an introduction to yourself and what your role is within your business?
Yeah, no, of course. So yeah, name's Faizan, go by Faiz. Working at Protiviti, I'm a senior consultant there. We're a management consultancy. I'm sure you guys are fairly well aware of what we do. So I work in sort of the business practice team within it, but more specifically within sort of diversity, equity, inclusion. I co-chair the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee, or ERG, at Protiviti. I was actually one of the founding members about a year and a bit ago. So have very much have helped sort of drive it and build it from the bottom up and kind of learn as you go is very much what I've been getting into. But sort of DE&I and ERG committees are something that are very close to my heart, which is why I'm kind of quite keen to jump into this podcast, because there can be a little bit of a moving target, and there's difficulties in knowing where to start. So yeah, hopefully we can, with my experience, I can bring a little bit to the table. But it's something that I definitely am passionate about talking about, and yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
And yourself, Beverly?
Hi, yes, my name's Beverly Tran. I've been at Microsoft for about 3.5 years now. So I'm a customer success account manager in our tech for social impact part of the business. So I work with our customers in the charity and non-profit sector in maximizing their investment in our sort of technology and helping them use our technology to drive towards their goals and missions. And on the side of that sort of day role, I'm part of the Embrace ERG that we have at Microsoft. So it's formerly known as the BAME ERG. It's our Ethnicity at Microsoft Employee Resource Group. And I'm currently on the leadership team as the marketing and comms lead. And it's something that I'm, again, like Faye said, I'm really passionate about. I only joined the leadership team this year, but I've been involved with the ERG for the past couple of years and I've seen it grow. And it's something that I'm really interested in kind of sharing with everyone else. It's a conversation that I've been having with a lot more people internally and externally as well. And for me, the ERG is just something that I really enjoy being part of. So I hope that some of the stuff I say today can help other people sort of start ERGs and get involved with them, because I think they're great.
Absolutely. I'm similar to both of you in terms of setting up ERGs at Softcat. It's something that is just so fulfilling and rewarding when you start seeing how an organization can culturally evolve by starting up some of these network groups. Faith, when it comes to an ERG, just so that for some of our listeners, what is an ERG? What does that stand for?
Yeah, so it's an employee resource group, employee recognition group is what this term sort of stands for. I actually had to look it up myself before we started. We don't actually call it an ERG ourselves in Protivity. It's more of an internal committee,
Yeah.
Made up of just sort of individuals who are passionate about a specific topic, or passionate about more. Topic's the wrong word. Value is probably the best word for it.
Yeah.
That they wanna progress and want to really make an impact and change the culture of an organization from the inside outwards. And so it's more about, and how we've built that Protivity is getting sort of like-minded individuals together who are passionate about the same thing, want to push towards the same goal, and understanding what each individual can bring and what potentially the organization's missing, to see where the gaps need to be plugged, and then hopefully trying to plug those gaps effectively.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, I think Beverly as well. You mentioned that they're not always ERGs. What other names can these kind of ERGs be known as? You mentioned committee there, Faiz, but what other names could be given by organisations?
I've heard it called colleague resource groups before, so
Yeah,
CRGs, business resource groups, and employee affinity groups. So quite a lot of different names, to be honest. But
yeah,
like they said, they're kind of normally just set up to kind of bring people together. And I think they're a really good opportunity to not only connect with people with the same sort of interests and values, but to learn about others as well. And I found that one of the most beneficial things of joining the ERGs, because they're not mutually exclusive, they're not exclusive at all. The whole point is that they're meant to be inclusive so that people can join them and share stories and just find out more information.
yeah, absolutely. And I've got a totally different theme to ask you about there, further down the conversation actually. So I'll pause for that one.
I'm quite. So my position in this conversation is that I'm quite novice to the term and anything around it. I'm trying to think from the standpoint of a business that doesn't have an ERG in place. A question to both of you, and maybe Beverly, you can answer this first. What steps were made in order to set up an ERG initially, and how have you been able to develop it to where it is today?
So I wasn't a founder of an ERG. I just joined when I joined Microsoft, and we have quite a few. We have Embrace, which is the ethnicity ERG. We have a Women at Microsoft. We have a Disability, a Families, a Military at Microsoft, a Gleam for the LGBTQI plus community. There's quite a few, and I'm not sure in terms of sort of how they came about, but when I joined the Embrace ERG, it was quite small. And what we did to kind of grow that was basically just put in some structure in place in terms of having a leadership team and specific roles, and aligning that to our goals as well. So we found that our goals, broadly speaking, were to educate, inspire, and celebrate culture and ethnicity and race at Microsoft. And I found that those three pillars have really helped with driving forward our mission. To tie in with the company mission as well, to empower everyone to achieve more. And I think when we set up the structure for this year, we had quite distinct pillars. So we had a pillar around skills, philanthropy, employee, marketing, customer, and sort of partnerships. And that has really helped having sort of heads of those pillars and then bringing people in that way. So in my role as marketing, it's basically to amplify our message and get as many people involved as possible and let people know what an ERG is and what's going on. Because we have so many new people that join our calls sometimes. When they do HR training, we talk about the different ERGs that they can join, and they're always constantly wanting to find out more, saying, how do I get involved? How do I listen to these sessions? How do I join in these sessions? How can I run a session? It kind of organically builds that way, by word of mouth, and people kind of joining something and saying, that's really cool. That was really interesting. And I learned something from that. And just by doing that, we've tried to be as inclusive as possible and celebrate all the sort of festivals and the celebrations from all different races and cultures. And I'm finding that a lot more people are happy to share. When I first joined the ERG, one of the first sessions that I did was a session called Our Stories, which was an opportunity for people just talk about the topic of their choice. And I chose to speak about my parents' journey as refugees from Vietnam to the UK. I was so scared to do it. It was really terrifying, actually. But I found that when I did it, it was so cathartic. It was such a fun experience. Loads of people reached out, and I actually found loads of people who had the same experience as me. And I've met loads of people from the ERG who have those similar experiences. So I think it's super rewarding, and it's something that is almost work outside of work. So you kind of create that network um, organically, and you
Yeah.
get to meet a bunch of people that you never would have really encountered before in your day job.
I was
Sorry,
going to say
Alex.
same for you, Faizan, as well. Same question.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's interesting here what Beverly had, because obviously coming from Microsoft, it's obviously a bit of a different beast than coming from Protivity. But when it came to start off, it was, and how we kind of founded it initially, it was just a couple of us who were quite passionate about the topic and realized that there was a little bit of a gap compared to some of the variety of other ERGs that we have in Protivity, that there was something that was a little bit lacking around sort of minorities, DE&I, and the conversations that go with it. It also came from some people who had some personal experiences, and who wanted to have a discussion but never felt like they were able to do it. And it was noticed by sort of the senior leadership and the management that a discussion needs to happen. Obviously, it was kind of around the time that sort of Black Lives Matters really kicked off, and the whole George Floyd incident, etc. So it was very much in the zeitgeist of what people were looking at, and it was, we were having conversations on the side of the desk or just chatting in a pub or wherever it may have been, and it came about that, look, we actually need to, this shouldn't just be a conversation between us people who are us group of individuals who are interested in this. This is probably going to be something that's a lot more overarching. So we looked in, and we got the sponsorship from senior management, who were great, and said, yeah, look, we think this is definitely something that's worth talking about. And we're able to form a committee just out of our initial group initially, and then it was more on the fly of, okay, how do we figure out what we need to do and establish communication, like Beverly sort of talked about, and what events do we want to hold and how do we get the message out, but also making sure that we kind of get the right message out as well, rather than just talking about things for the sake of talking about them.
Yeah.
It was, what is it that actually matters, and it's and having that kind of discussion initially was super helpful. But it was very much people who are passionate, like I think Beverly hit the nail on the head, is work outside of work. It's something that you want to do outside of what you're, and something that you are passionate about, and that's really helped sort of drive it, because people are kind of very much, it's a core value for them. It's what they want to be a part of, and they want the change that they want to see, and it's then almost gone from an action group almost to a formalized committee where we've got defined roles, defined sponsorship, and you know, getting involved with people and organizations like TCare has just kind of really naturally just let it grow. And because yeah, like, you'll be surprised how many people have a conversation or want to have a conversation about this, but have no idea what to do or where to start. And I think the ERG is a good, safe place for people to start asking questions, and most importantly, making mistakes. This isn't a one size fits all. There's no silver bullet here, and it's, you got to flirt with the line a little bit about what you can and can't say to understand, okay, how do you deliver certain messages, and that's all been really interesting as we've grown. And yeah, it's been interesting to manage not just like your organizational kind of landscape, but just what sort of people's opinions, because this isn't sort of black and white to say, here's your solution, here's your problem. It's more so, you know, people are going to react differently to certain messages and how you deliver that message, and what that message is actually, the intention of that message as well. So that's kind of been good to get those kind of groups of individuals in, and then being able to kind of take that, use that voice and use the momentum that's happening outside of your company to affect change inside of it was kind of how we got started, and hopefully the momentum we're looking to carry on into this year and next.
Yeah, and in my experience, that I mean, particularly in terms of employee resource groups at Softcat, you know, the clues in the words, isn't it? Employee resource group, and it's often initiated more often than not by employees of an organisation. How important has it been for you when it comes to your organisations of making sure that there's, I don't know, a senior exec sponsor that is actually buying into it and is the voice on the leadership team, and then also kind of the practicalities of setting up an ERG, because it's not easy in terms of like setting aims and objectives. Is there a cost element to it as well? Beverly?
Yeah, I would say sponsorship is hugely important, but kind of touching on what Faye said about passion, it needs to be someone who's genuinely passionate about the ERG and can help sort of advocate for you when you're not in the room, with leadership, and get that message out there for you. I think the exec sponsors we have are amazing at doing that because they are genuinely passionate about Embrace and about ethnicity at Microsoft. So whenever we do have anything important to talk about in terms of, I don't know, events or moments in time, they can amplify that message for us, and we get a much bigger reach that way. And then they can also help other sort of department heads and directors kind of buy into the ERG. And a lot of the time they kind of talk about the ERG and people kind of get a bit more interested and say, oh, that sounds interesting. I didn't know that the ERG was doing that. So you kind of get spread that way, which is a good thing, I think. And in terms of the practicalities, it differs, I guess, from different organizations. At Microsoft, we have global ERGs. So in the US, for example, they've got a lot more people than we have. So they have distinct ERGs, such as Blacks at Microsoft, Asians at Microsoft, Latinx at Microsoft. The UK is a lot smaller. So we just have Embrace for kind of all of us, which is kind of good and bad in a way, because we deliberately changed our name from BAME to avoid that sort of umbrella term, because we didn't think it was inclusive. It didn't really speak to what we were anymore. We asked our community what did you want to be called, and they kind of voted for the name Embrace. But I think it's a good thing to include what the community are thinking. We only work because of our community. We only work because we make asks of the community. What do you want to hear from us? What do you want to see? What changes do you want to see made? And then we try to action those. So in terms of setting up an ERG, I think the things that you need to do are the understanding what your goals are, having that leadership, sponsorship, and having that structure, but then most importantly, listening to what community you're trying to reach out to, whether it is the BAME community or allies or someone else, just having that kind of driver to kind of see, okay, so they want to hear more about this, let's create a specific team to address that, or let's create a specific pillar to look at that. And we have a HR representative in our Embrace ERG. So when it comes to things like self ID, we have a sort of HR spin on it as well, so we can amplify that message throughout our ERG. And I think that's really important, because then it shows not just what the ERG is doing in isolation, but how it's helping with the whole organization as a whole, and the sort of change that is coming from that.
I think that's a really great answer, Beverly. Thank you. I'm curious, because you've mentioned examples around Microsoft, and Microsoft is quite a big organization, and you also on top of that gave us the example that you have global ERGs. A question to maybe you, Faizan, more. If you're a smaller business, SMB, for example, what's the best way that you can go about setting up something like an an ERG, especially if you're 100 or 150 people. You might find it's quite difficult to set those things up, because those who are within the underrepresented group might be 10% of the workforce, which if it's 100 people, that's only 10.
No, it's a good question. Personally, and this is my personal mantra, so don't take this as gospel. I've always been a big proponent of it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, especially when it comes down to these kinds of things. There's going to be a lot of red tape or bureaucracy or whatever bullshit exists in your company, which naturally happens. It's better just to get up and get going. So it's like getting a group of people together and coming together with it, and especially like if you're coming from the bottom up, which is how we came, which is like more sort of employee resources rather than sort of senior management. It's creating a bit almost like a business case is probably the wrong word for it, but creating a case for it of like, look, these are some individuals, this is what we've done, this is what we understand you guys are missing, and this is why setting this up is also almost going to be beneficial for you. It's that idea, that selling idea, Alex, that you probably know quite well of what's in it for me. And that ultimately is what people are going to buy off and people are going to respond to. So it's more like giving that case of like, right, this is what we're passionate about. This is how it kind of makes business sense for you to look at. These are the things that you're probably not necessarily looking at that can be a little bit more difficult or not easily tangible. The general things I always go down to if I'm trying to persuade, I guess, anybody to my way of thinking is see if we can give them sort of time, quality, or cost savings, right? Or improve quality, reduce time, or reduce cost. And getting that just as a very loose framework is always going to be quite helpful to then sell your idea if you need to sell it. This kind of stuff doesn't need a lot of selling, like generally as a DE&I kind of ERG, but just anything generally that might be not around DE&I, but maybe something that's completely separate that you want to set up is get an understanding of what you're about and the value of what you want to do. Get a group of individuals to start talking about it, and then just do it, and then say like, look, this is on your radar now. Like whether you like it or not, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. This conversation's happening in the business. You either need to sign up to this, or you need to make a decision about, if you don't, what that's going to mean for you as marketing or what your business is going to look like in the wider market. That's the stance you're going to make. So it's be a bit more bullish about it. And if people give you no for an answer, just do it. Like there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing it. Like what the worst they can say is like, oh, well, we don't want you to do this anymore. And you're kind of back to the position that you're in initially to start with. The only thing you can do is gain from this. So just yeah, like I said, just it's easier to ask for forgiveness and permission. And generally, once you see some, and particularly, I don't know like what works at Softcat, Microsoft, etc. But I know at Protivity that once management see that you've got momentum and you can see that you're leading something, they will just back you. They'll be like, right, that's actually really quite helpful. That's already been taken care of. This isn't actually adding to my to-do list. This is kind of running itself, and something you can tack onto. I mean, one thing that you need to be careful of as well is you're going to have internal politics. You're going to have people who want to be a part of UERG so they can whack it on their CV saying, look how great I am and look how much I've done for my community or my business and all that bullshit. That's going to naturally happen. That's fine. You just need to figure out how you want to sort of manage that and how you want to cut that off at the head and how you not necessarily quieten that voice, but if that's what that individual goal is, how do you effectively motivate them to help you achieve your broader, wider goal?
You mentioned quite a few broad kind of themes in that whole paragraph there, Faizan, as well. And when it comes to that kind of exec sponsor, it does, if you're thinking about trying to talk to your leadership team, in my experience at Softcat as well, when you're talking to the leadership team about setting up new ERGs or creating these new initiatives, if you think most people are used to like kind of looking at the commercial aspects and the commercial benefits, and some of this can be quite subjective as well because you just don't know where it's going to go. But in my book, it can only enhance your company culture. And if you're an organization that really values your employees, you really value your customers as well, these kind of employee resource groups can only be a bonus. I read a statistic on the employee experience benchmarking report the other day that stated that 40% of companies now have an established ERG, which is 9% more than last year, which means that, you know, this is growing now. I mean, like when I started my role a couple of years ago, kind of diversity and inclusion roles wasn't really a thing. You see those kind of roles popping up all the time now because D&I generally is just so much more prominent. Some good food for thought there for some of the smaller organisations to consider.
No, absolutely. I think you touched on a good point. This is fundamental now to allow how a lot of businesses work, and there's very much more an empowerment of the people that's generally been happening recently with things that are happening in the news, etc. And if you're not listening to what your employees are telling you, there's obviously a fundamental mistake there. And if there's wider implications you can look at as well, like retention and recruitment of, if you're not looking at what people are telling you in the market, are they going to feel empowered enough in your business to actually make a change? What does your future leadership of your business look like? And do you have your ears close enough to the ground? Are you just becoming a little bit out of touch? And the way things are moving so damn quickly, it's very easy to lose touch with what's happening very quickly. So having it just keeps you honest, keeps you humble, and sparks some new ideas, which is never a bad thing.
I just wanted to. I've been sort of listening to a lot of what's been said, and it's interesting to me because when I hear about these ERG being set up across different businesses and the way that they run and stuff like that, is it kind of fair to say it's a little similar to societies at universities, if I was to oversimplify it in terms of how it's set up? I'm just thinking of what could be the extreme in terms of explaining it in a layman terms way. It's because with a society, I think it's the same thing, right? You go and you set that up within your own peers, and then you bring that to the university to say, can we have this society? And then you try and build that community. So is that sort of a fair summarization, or am I sort of oversimplifying it slightly?
No, I think that's about right. I feel like societies at university, you can come up with ones that you're passionate about and interested about. I think when I was at university, there was one about knitting and coffee and Quidditch. So as long as you've got people who are passionate about it and are willing to drive it, then you can kind of create that group of people and find like-minded people and people who want to learn more as well. But yeah, I think that's an accurate representation.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's yeah, because everybody's generally on the same level as well. When you start an EIG, it's not necessarily that you've got too many people who are massively more senior than you or massively more junior to you. So that's kind of how it works at uni. So you have that kind of level structure that everybody's kind of feels free to have those conversations. It's a good point, to be fair, that you want to be able to have open and free conversations within your ERG. You don't want to feel like, well, so-and-so has just joined the meeting, I've got to watch what I say or how I talk or what I can say because I think they're going to get offended or I'm not going to get my bonus, whatever it may be. You don't necessarily want too much of that to happen. You've got to either leave that stuff at the door or make sure that you kind of have a bit more of a level playing field where people feel a bit more free and open to have those discussions. But no, a uni society is pretty close to the truth.
Yeah. I mean, that all goes back to like having a sense of belonging, doesn't it? So, you know, not when I say gone are the days, but it's not just always about the job title and your basic salary these days, isn't it? It's about being part of a community, feeling like whether you're passionate about sustainability or passionate about race or passionate about some different cause, that you can find something about yourself in the organisation that you work for, going back to like the organisation values as well. And I think that's really important for organizations to really kind of think about as well.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a safe space for people to kind of join and share and learn as well. Because I think a lot of the time, some people can be worried about saying the wrong thing or because they're not part of a specific minority, for example. that they can't join the ERG, but that's absolutely not the case, because the whole point is to be able to share with people resources where they can learn and educate and kind of celebrate with others. Like all the celebrations that we do throughout the year, there are so many that I didn't know about, and now I'm super excited about them, and I've learned the history behind them and what people normally do. And equally, I love sharing all the celebrations that I celebrate throughout the year as a Vietnamese Chinese person. And to find people who do exactly the same thing, or find people who do something similar but they're slightly different because they're Malaysian or something, it's just really cool. I think it's really fun
Yeah.
to learn new things from different people, to share that with your community. And when people say Happy Lunar New Year to me, I think that's lovely. It's just such a nice way to make friends and feel
Yeah.
that sense of belonging. And like you said, Nush, because it's that sense of belonging that I think can be quite hard in an organization if you're new as well. You kind of just stick to the day job, and you don't know what else to kind of look for, or things to do outside of your day job. So I think it's really good to have these ERGs as places where people can kind of socialize, whether that's in person or virtually. Someone new joined the company recently, and they posted in our ERG team site that they felt like they found a treasure trove, which I think that was really nice of them to say.
Yeah. Just changing tacks slightly, if I can, Alex. We've talked about all the really positive stuff about ERGs, and based in my role, I'm a massive fan of ERGs, and I know our business is really passionate about it. But I often get asked the question about when does the majority become the minority? And not every person can see themselves in a network. They might see themselves as an ally, of course, but not everyone can see themselves in a network, and then they feel quite ostracized as an employee. What have Microsoft and Protivity done to kind of tackle maybe some of those conversations that might have come from your employees? Beverly, should we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So I think we try to make all of the ERGs as sort of open as possible. So even if you feel like you're not part of a specific network, or you don't feel you have some sort of imposter syndrome about being there, um, what we've tried to do, I guess, is try to make them as open as possible, open a lot of the events to all employees. It's not just specific for ERG
Yeah.
members. It's not a push that you have to join the ERG afterwards either. It's just a conversation. It's just starting that kind of piquing that interest. And we have we work quite closely with our company sort of well-being group as well, so they help with amplifying a lot of the ERGs activities. So not just Embrace, but like International Women's Day coming up, they share that with all of the whole organization. And then they kind of say, if you're interested in finding out more, then you can join this ERG, and try to make it as open as possible to allies, like you said, because we don't want people to feel like they don't belong anywhere, because that's just not a nice feeling in a big company. So there's somewhere for everyone in terms of joining things to learn about more. Um, you don't have to say anything. It's more just joining because you have that interest. And for Black History Month, we did a whole series of events around Black History Month history, and also we did a series around hair as well, and how that's culturally significant. And we had so many people join that, from every race, every ethnicity, people who didn't have hair at all, because it's just something that is interesting. So just finding topics to talk about, and kind of like what Faye said earlier, you have the freedom to have those conversations and to bring those ideas about. It's not as rigid as maybe your day job, or something that needs rules to follow. If someone has an idea, a lot of the time they'll just post in the group and say, I'm thinking of doing this. Would anyone like to join me? Or is this something we can look at doing further? And I think that's a great way to get people talking. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be of ethnic minority to join the ethnic minority group. You don't
Yeah.
have to be a woman to join the women's group. You don't have to have a disability to join the disability group. It's just making sure that people know that, and people understand that there isn't judgment. The idea is for people to join so that they can learn more and ask those questions in a sensitive way that they might be a bit worried to ask in other situations,
Yeah.
just to improve sort of diversity inclusion as a whole,
Mm.
and the way that we speak to customers as well. A lot of the customers that I'm speaking to have their own kind of ERGs, and they're interested in how we deal with our ERGs too, and how they can help develop their ERGs, because I think ERGs are so important for morale. I think they're really important for people in a company to feel like they have somewhere that they can feel part of a community, whether that's sort of diverse hiring as well. I think it's really important to have ERGs that show the company cares. People want to work for a company that cares. I don't want to join a company that doesn't have an ERG sort of system at all, and they don't want
Yeah.
one, you know?
Yeah, and actually, you just make a good point there as well. As if you did move on from Microsoft one day, that's the kind of stuff that you'd be looking out for as well, aside of the actual benefits of
100%.
the job that you'd be doing. Um, Faizan, if I may as well, like one of the questions I had was about the benefits of leaning on the employee resource groups. I mean, if you take something like Black Lives Matter, for example, that was such a monumental time for Black people, Black employees, our Black colleagues, our Black customers. How did, let's say, the leadership team in your organisation lean on the ERG to start the conversation? Because I know at Softcat, it felt like people were treading on eggshells a little bit at the time. And Alex, you know, you might be able to add something from a SoftwareONE perspective. Is that, you know, everyone was treading on eggshells. People didn't really know what to say, didn't know how the message was going to land. How from your perspective did the ERG at Protiviti kind of really help support some of that messaging and kind of learning?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. We're quite lucky. We were kind of sort of put in the forefront of it because we're an employee resource sort of group and action committee that this was a topic that everybody felt quite passionate about. So we were happy to lead on that as a conversation with the sort of senior management, happy to support it. We're quite lucky that some of the senior management are from that minority group, so they absolutely helped us drive those kinds of conversations. And something that we started at that time and we've continued to do, which has been really helpful, is this thing called courageous conversations within Protiviti, where we'll pick a topic area, whether it be hair. One of the stuff we've talked about was what's in a name and the importance of people's names and getting that right. And it's a conversation that anybody in the business can join. We have a couple of questions that we ask the rest of the group, but it's an unrecorded, it's not documented discussion that we have where people can ask the questions they want to ask, and they can discuss the topics they want to discuss. And we'll have individuals either from the committee itself or from other parts of the organization who are happy to field these types of questions, or even from outside the organization come in and talk about their experiences. And in an open and a kind of safe, non-judgmental way. And that's been really helpful in people having... It takes a lot because it's not easy to get the ball rolling. It's not easy to start asking a question to a minority group that you're maybe unsure of and just hope that somebody gives you an answer. So it takes a little bit of time to draw that out, and patience is absolutely quite important when it comes down to those kinds of conversations. But once the ball gets rolling, the momentum really picks up very quickly, and people start to feel a lot more empowered, and they'll, like you mentioned, come out with stories that you never sort of they'd think they maybe come out with, or talk about experiences that they have. And I kind of coming onto Beverly's point, it really said that the ERG and leaning on that ERG kind of helps foster that feeling of a community, which a business isn't set out necessarily to do, because it's there to make money, right? It's there to make a profit, pay its shareholders, whatever, right? That's what businesses are there for. But that there's a gap between creating something that's an organization or a company and creating a community, or creating a community within that. And having an ERG that looks and talks about what matters in the community, both within and without of an organization, is really important to, again, make people feel a part of something, and something that's bigger than them, rather than just coming in. And I'm not saying this is true of everybody, but coming in and picking up a paycheck and then doing what the hell they want after work, right? It's building that in. It helps people feel, like you said, Beverly said it beautifully, about that idea of belonging, and especially when you knew that can be quite difficult. But that whole BLM thing is, it's able also to talk about, and having an ERG can give you the opportunity to have the tough discussions. and still feel quite safe and still feel like you're not maybe going to get sued by a particular employee, which maybe some people or companies have been erring on the caution of.
Yeah.
If I start something, am I, by the sheer fact that I'm starting something, racist? That's not the mindset you need to start to get. That's not it at all. But having an ERG can enable you to have those difficult conversations and align some of the things that are going to be important to your employees, and give them an opportunity to talk about it, but also sort of not inadvertently, but manage that rhetoric as well, rather than just, here's our company line, we're not going to say anything about this because it might upset this particular group. That you need to think about people inside and outside as well, and that's why also with ERGs, getting people from outside of your organization to give perspective on other things that they may not have thought of helps as well. But it's an excellent and quite an efficient vehicle to talk about some of these harder hitting, difficult conversations, whilst also empowering people to employees to start that discussion.
Yeah, great shout.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and I really appreciate your views, Faizan. I'm sitting here, and like I said, this is a really new term for me, and I'm just constantly learning, and I'm sure our listeners are doing the same thing. And I've got two things that I kind of wanted to ask. One thing is around the types of activities that you do within an ERG group, because I think it's great having a group of individuals who are all passionate about driving a particular topic, but they may struggle because they're not too sure how they set up maybe fundraising for a charity or an event where they can educate others in the business about their particular topic. What would be like maybe two from each of you's, two things that they could add or they could try and do to help push the voice of their community? Beverly, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, sure. So we have, kind of like Faye said, sessions that are sort of safe spaces. So we have listening circles. Normally after something has happened, which isn't a great kind of stance to take, but it's an opportunity for people to air out what they're feeling and the frustrations they're feeling. And that's not just Embrace. A lot of our other ERGs do that as well. Like after the Sarah Everard situation, Sabina Nessa as well, the women at Microsoft did a few listening circles where people joined to just talk about violence against women and just how they were feeling. And that wasn't structured, that wasn't recorded, that was just somewhere that people could join to speak and to get it all out basically at work, which is something that I find very interesting because I don't normally get emotional at work in that sense. I think it's very vulnerable to be able to take part in those listening circles and to hear what other people have to say and to share that as well. It's the same with Embrace. We have listening circles after George Floyd and around sort of the Asian hate that happened after COVID. And I think those listening circles are so valuable because there isn't an agenda. There isn't necessarily a specific goal you have to reach or an outcome that you have to reach. It's just for people to get it all out, and for other people to understand why you feel a certain way about something that's happened. So I think they're really important because it's about listening to the community and then after that following up and see, are there other things that we can do to help with those grievances and to help with those sort of feelings that you are feeling. And then one of the other things which is quite simple to do is set up calls and just invite people to them, to share about a specific festival or a celebration or a story. Like I said, we have an Our Story session, so that's kind of monthly-ish, and that's whoever wants to do it, take the wheel. You do it on whatever you want to do it on. I did it on my parents' story. We had a colleague do it on the Day of the Dead in Mexico because it's something that was really close to her heart. We did it for Black History Month. We had people from Trinidad, from where was it? Ghana, Uganda, everywhere talking about sort of their heritage and upbringing. We did it for Lunar New Year. We had people from Singapore, British born Chinese, and it's just a really good way to sort of have a very informal conversation about your heritage, your culture, your ethnicity, your race, and the sort of feelings that you have behind it. And if you tie that in with the celebration as well, then it's a good way to share kind of what you do as personally around that time of year. We had sessions around Hanukkah, around Holocaust Memorial Day. We have sessions coming up on Holi and Ramadan, and they're all community led. We don't really do much. All we do is send out the invite. We basically ask people if that's something you're interested in doing and you want to share with other people, please feel free to find others who want to take part and to be involved in it and run with it. Just have that session. We'll amplify it for you. We'll get people to join and we'll let people know that it's happening. And those are some of the best sessions because they're so chatty and they're so fun, and people just put in the chat box and stuff about how, oh my god, this is like my culture and this is so similar to my upbringing, and that food looks amazing, and just it creates a conversation. And I think that's a really nice thing that you have. And then because I found that the Embrace community has sort of become my kind of second family at work kind of thing, because I work in a global team where I'm the only one in the UK, so I don't have a direct team in the UK. So whenever I go to the office, I see someone from Embrace and I'm like, hey, nice to meet you in person. And it just creates that you find new friends and you find new people. And that's how it's sort of organically created. And from sessions like that, actually, with the food thing, food is so important to all cultures. Everyone talks about food all the time. It brings people together.
It definitely
It's
does.
such a good way. Yeah, it's such a good way to kind of introduce people to food and have a good meal with your friends and family and stuff. And because we kept having so many requests and talks about food, we created a cookbook, and we just asked people from the community to submit recipes, and we kind of got it printed, and it's such
Such
a
a good
nice kind
idea.
of tangible thing that we have now from the ERG, all from our members. So yeah, it's I would say the two things is the calls are quite easy to set up, but it's getting that sort of buy-in from people who want to do it, and then as an ERG sort of member, I guess, amplifying it on their behalf, joining those conversations, joining those calls, and just taking part and kind of getting stuck in.
Yeah.
So, so how does someone who how does say I'm a senior leader at a medium sized business, right? And this isn't something that we've got set up at all. And the first time we bring an idea, it sort of falls on deaf ears. How does someone within that position sort of try and ignite these groups to start existing? I know that's quite a difficult question, but I think there's going to be a lot of businesses that are in a position where they may not have this set up and they're not sure if it's something that their workforce is really going to grab onto straight away. And they know it might be something that might take 6 months to a year to actually get into a position that could be reasonable.
And Alex, to
Feel free
add
to
to
take
that,
your time as well.
I was going to say, Alex, in addition to that question, some of this is also on top of people's day job
Yeah, nice,
as well.
easy questions.
So kind
Appreciate
of
that,
maybe
guys.
I don't know, expanding on
Yeah.
that question a little bit. Maybe Faizan can take that one about how do you
Yeah,
justify it
no,
all?
it's an interesting question. Like, taking it one bit at a time. If you're kind of, let me just make sure. Sorry, this mic needs to hit the edit room floor.
That's fine.
Don't worry.
Just thinking about it.
That was my fault for adding in an extra bit there.
No, you're good. I'm just trying to think. I think one of the key things you need to do if you have a small group of individuals, let's just start with that. If you've got a small group of people who want to start something, get organized. That's the easiest way to do it. Know who does what job, what their roles and responsibilities are, so you can have some accountability. Because ultimately, what you're trying to do with an ERG is instill some accountability to individuals or the business or whoever it is. And if you can't do that in your own shop, you can't expect that to happen anywhere else down the road. So have a clear idea of who's going to be our secretary, who's our treasurer, who's going to be our marketing person, who's going to be our leader, who's going to be our external ally, community liaison, etc. So have all of those kind of set if you've got a group of people to do it. It can be difficult, however, to start that conversation if you feel like you're a bit of an island. If you are the only minority in a company, it's going to be difficult to be like, right, how do I start having this conversation? And I guess it's probably just test the waters, see what responds. Don't necessarily publicly go out in every way. Just get an idea of the lay of the land. Spark some ideas, see what bites and see what doesn't. It's quite a lot of trial and error that I found, at least anyways, when I was starting this, is what's resonating, what's not resonating. What do we need to add and what do we need to take away? What are we talking about that's maybe not getting the wider impact that we want? And it's tough because if it's something that you're passionate about, you're going to have to be a bit brave. You're going to have to be a bit courageous, and you're going to have to step up and say, this is kind of my line in the sand. This is what's important to me, and this is what I want to talk about. And that can be difficult when you don't have other people around you to support you. But what you'll generally find is, as soon as one kind of person, in my experience, takes that initiative or takes that jump, a barrage of people follow behind.
Yeah.
Everybody else is either thinking this, or has thought about it, or has been affected by it, or is currently being affected by it. And you'll be surprised how quickly that kind of that idea gains momentum. Yeah, absolutely. But you have to be able to sort of be a bit brave and be like, right, this is something that I want to talk about. This is something that's kind of really affected me, and I'm going to be the person to take the lead of it. Like I said, if you've got a group of people, it's always a little bit easier because you feel like you've already got a little bit of backing behind you. But that getting that kind of organization and getting that structure in is kind of super important to start that off in the initial. Have a goal of what you want to try and achieve. Like, you can have ERGs can be quite ethereal in terms of what they're trying to bring about and the change that they're trying to bring about. And it's hard to hang your hat on it. So then it's hard to measure how well your progress is on it. Like, are you actually getting anywhere? We want people to feel more comfortable. You just go up to a random person in your office and say, do you feel more comfortable right now? Like, how do you measure any of that?
Yeah.
So having something a little bit more tangible to then hang your hat on to say, right, this is what I can. And success is, again, the criteria of success is vastly different, people to people, person to person. If it's, I want to just have a conversation with another human being around this particular topic, then that's it. Or if I just can affect or change what one person thinks, or if one person feels better about having this conversation, that's my yard for success. That's absolutely what it looks like. But have a defined idea of what you want to achieve and where you want to take it. Because otherwise you can get into a habit of just having conversations, which is great and it makes people feel good. But ERGs and groups, at least from my perspective, is you want to make sure you get some action in as well.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to want some people who've got some big ideas, some big thinking, strategic stuff. That's great. But you got to get people who are going to get shit done. If you're not going to have that, it's no point just sitting around a campfire singing Kumbaya. It's not going to get you anywhere, right? Like, you're gonna have to get that people who go roll up the sleeves and be like, yeah, and that's difficult, especially when coming to your point, Nush, about this is on top of people's day jobs as well. Like, you need to get those individuals who are going to feel passionate about it. And what's probably, and I think Beverly mentioned it, is having, once you start to build some momentum, you'll find more and more people want to get involved, even if they're on the fringe. So it's almost kind of like in football, just bringing on subs. That's weird. That's a really weird analogy. But if you've got somebody who's like, look, I can't pick this up right now, you can pick somebody else up saying, look, if you've got some capacity, I need you to pick this up for me as well.
Yeah.
And being able to do that. Another difficult thing that can be, especially when you're starting something off, is taking all the responsibility yourself. You need to be able to delegate. I need to take my own advice. I'm terrible at this. But just being able to delegate the work out, to be like, right, this is where you're kind of looping back to where you started, where your structure comes in. If you're responsible for this, this is your responsibility, this is your remit, this is what we're going to need from you. And then you can cut out your time wasters, and you can cut out the people who aren't necessarily going to be able to do it. And you might have, I had a team of 15 people who wanted to start my committee and had all roles all worked out for them, to now have 5. You'll get a hell of a lot more done with that 5 than you would have done with that 15. Yeah,
you'll have a group of 5 doers, really. I'd probably also add there as well, is that there is just so much more knowledge on resource groups, networks, whatever you want to call them these days. You know, like a lot of us may have started up these kind of networks when it wasn't really a thing. There is such great opportunity to idea share. The fact that we're doing this podcast, we've got the organisations as part of TCare that we can idea share with. You know, there are so many organisations and customers and communities and partners in the industry that do this really well. So you can, like, as a smaller organisation or an organisation that's not even gone down this journey yet, you could probably like skip a few hoops, take on some of the stuff that didn't work, and kind of action some of this kind of stuff pretty quickly now as well.
Yeah, for sure. Did you want to add anything, Beverly? Because I felt like Faizan was really knocking it for six.
No, I completely agree in the fact that it is a lot of trial and error, and you have to be okay with that. It's a lot of trying things that might not work, but taking that risk and kind of having the attitude of, if not you, then who? If you don't do it, then someone else might not. So you have to sort of take that initiative to just put yourself out there, do it. If it doesn't get well received, that's okay. We learn from it and we learn what we can do next time better, and what things you can kind of take forward, what things you might want to leave behind. But it's an interesting journey, and I find that whenever you do something that actually hits the spot quite well, it's super rewarding and fulfilling to see, like Faizan said, just helping one person and just making that one person feel better actually makes it all worth it. And sometimes I get told that I spend too much time on this ERG over my day job, so there is a balance to be found.
No,
Definitely.
I think it's the balance for sure is needed. But no, I mean, just a comment from me before we have to sign off on this. It's this being part of an ERG seems quite pivotal to a lot of people who are within business or within a company already. And sort of my message to listeners is that if you're someone who is new to a business, or maybe you've just come out of university and you've come into the technology sector and you haven't really got those relationships, that this can be a pathway. There may be things set up within your business that you are passionate about, but you're not too sure about stepping into it because you just want to focus on your day job and make sure that you're doing that as best as possible. But I think this can be as equally as important as the job that you do on a regular basis. So yeah, please, if you've got an ERG set up in your business, get involved. Really do get involved and push your ideas through that. And that's how you're going to build those relationships, and it can potentially help your day job as well. And then if you ever do leave that business, at least you know you've got those connections, not from, oh, this person was really great at their job. It was, oh, this person done a fundraiser for XYZ, and I know that I can maybe call them if I ever want to do something else that's outside of work. So yeah, really do focus on those groups that you feel passionate about. Any final words from you guys, Beverly, Faizan?
No, just thank you for
I'll let you
having
go
me on.
first,
It's been
Beverly.
a really good conversation. So I'm hoping that it will be useful to people who are listening. And yeah, it's just been really fun to talk about ERGs.
Good. I'm glad. Faizan?
Yeah, no, look, I just echo what you kind of said there, Alex. Look, ERG is a way, especially if you're coming in at the bottom of an organization, if you're like looking at the chain, to get your voice out there and to have a bit more of a voice in your business. It can sometimes feel that you are a bit of a cog in a wheel. You're giving your day job, you need to get it done, you go out and you get it done, and that's about it. And if there is anything that you feel quite strongly about, if you do want to affect change, that ERGs is an absolutely fantastic way to do it, because it's a committee that's going to be backed by your senior leadership, and it's going to cause noise, and that's important for all businesses is to have that and to have that feedback loop. So if you are feeling like, I wish I could do more, and an ERG hasn't been set up or you're not a part of one, absolutely get involved with it, because that's your way of making and affecting change in the way that you want to affect it. But yeah, and again, thank you so much. This has been it's been a fantastic conversation. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Thank you all.
No, thanks for joining us. I hope everyone's taken some nuggets of information away from this session. I'm sure they have.
I definitely will have to listen back to this one and take some notes down, because
Go and set up an ERG in SoftwareONE, Alex.
Gonna have to. I think we've got. I think I've not been aware that we already have some set up. We just don't. We haven't used that term for them.
Yeah,
I guess.
Gotcha.
That's what I mean. They're called so many different things. I mean, like we call them networks at Softcat. We don't call them ERGs. So lots of different terminologies.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think there's always more you can do in that space, I believe. And SoftwareONE, specifically, we're a global company, so we definitely want to strive to do what the likes of Microsoft have done in terms of having global ERGs and building a global network. So a lot to take on board. So thank you for your time, guys. Faizan, Beverly, it's been great. Nush, thank you. As always, a brilliant co-host on this. So we'll do the usual stuff, which is follow us on the socials. So you've got this on the website. We're on YouTube, Spotify. Please like if you're listening on Spotify or on YouTube. It helps with the algorithms. It means more people can actually listen to what we're putting out there. Feel free to share it within your peers, share it with your family, friends, whoever you can, who you think's going to have interest in our podcast. And until next time, you've been listening to the TK Podcast, and take care.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. So please continue the dialogue on socials. To stay updated on when we release the next episode, follow us on LinkedIn and on Twitter at TC4RE. And don't forget to check our website at www.tcare.org for more information and content on today's topics.